Back that was bad. And this is the war between Kali and
the Trinity. There is a Puran called the Kalki Puran, and the Kalki Puran describes the fight between or the war between Kalki and Kali. Kalki Puran is supposed to be a Bhavishya Puran, a Puran that records something that's going to happen in the future.
Kalki is yet
to come into our Kalyug. But you know, Ashwathaman as a character is a very powerful character. He's invincible. He's more powerful than Bhishma, more powerful than Drona. He's more powerful than Arjun or Karan, basically because of that gem on his forehead, and he's invincible, he's indomitable, which is why Yudhishthir lies to Drona saying Ashwathaman Hati Hata. My first book wasn't Shatru. My first published book was Shatru.
Oh, okay.
My first book was published second, Agniputr. It was a book I started writing when I was 13 years old.
Are you spiritual?
I'm very spiritual.
And are you practicing?
I'm not religious.
So what you're saying is you don't need to be in that social order to be spiritual?
You don't have to be in that social order to be spiritual at all. You can be spiritual without being religious. I am very connected to the roots that I come from.
Where do you come from? First, let's start with that. Where is it that the Bommadeswaras
Bommadevaras.
Where do the Bommadevaras come from? Tishta Jagrata Prapya Vanan Buddha. Arise, awake, strive for knowledge. Namaskar. My name is Lipika and welcome to the TheIndicPen. We call this the Uttishta Bharata series, and today with me I have Vadhan, a very dear friend, a brilliant writer, a mythologist, and we will talk about his new book, his journey into writing, and how he is connected to Tipu Sultan. Interested? Let's dive right into this conversation. Welcome, Vadhan, to the TheIndicPen series. How are you?
I'm doing well, Lipika. I'm doing very well. Thank you, and thank you for having me over. As usual, it is great fun talking to you and having this conversation.
I think the last we met was over a dish of chola bhaturas.
Chola bhatura in the previous years
at the World Book Fair.
World Book Fair.
Yeah. So that was the last time we met. And since then, you are out with your new book called The Song of
the Trinity.
And why don't we start with you telling us about this book? It's a very interesting plot that you shared earlier, and it starts from the point of where the Kalyug comes to an end, and the king of Kalyug, Kali takes over, and this is the war between Kali and
the Trinity, or the forces of good, so to speak. So let me start, how this premise came about.
Yes.
The premise came about when, during, I read a lot of mythology, Indian mythology. It's something that I love to read, and it's a brilliant piece of literature, if, more than anything else. So there is a Puran called the Kalki Puran.
Yes.
And the Kalki Puran describes the fight between or the war between Kalki and Kali, right? Kalki is the 10th avatar of Vishnu.
10th avatar, yeah.
Now, Kalki Puran is supposed to be a Bhavishya Puran, a Puran that records something that's going to happen in the future.
In the future. And as per the popular belief, Kalki is yet to
come into our Kalyug. So my belief is that every Puran, or that's the interpretation that I choose to take, is that every Puran is only a recording of what's already happened. Because again, even according to our own Sanatan beliefs, the future, though written, can be changed. So there is an element of randomness even in the future. So therefore, in my opinion, the Kalki Puran records what happens in every Kalyug. between Kalki and Kali. Now, this is not the first Kalyug, nor is this going to be the last Kalyug. In the sequence of events, in the cyclical time that we believe in, right? From the nanosecond to the age of Brahma, the breath of Vishnu, which destroys many universes, many multiverses. This is one Kalyug amongst millions of Kalyugs that are happening across. And it is not limited to our little green dot in the universe, but is limited to the entire universe. Right? So this records what happened in the previous Kalyug. So that's the first premise that I took.
Interesting.
The second premise I took was the end of Kalyug. Kali jumps from one Kalyug, which is that Kalyug, the current Kalyug in which he is there, to a future Kalyug. Right? That's how the Kalki Purana ends. Which means 3000 years ago or 4000 years ago, when this Purana was written, they already understood the concept of a multiverse. They already understood the concept of alternate or parallel worlds. Right?
Which is something the West is now picking up for
West
their
is
stories.
now only getting a small idea. It's still a part of fiction
Right.
of the West.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Marvel multiverse and etc. and so forth.
It's like
Okay.
all your devatas portrayed there in the
We discovered that
Avengers.
3000 years
Yeah.
ago. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
So, it's so therefore what he does is he jumps from one Kalyug to another Kalyug. And the story ends there. It stops there. So the second premise I took was, what if he was captured when he was making that jump by nobody but no less than the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva.
Okay.
And therefore I brought in that concept, that premise, and said that Kali is jumping from the previous Kalyug to our Kalyug through a time continuum that is also described there. They call it a time continuum. A time continuum is a tunnel through which you can move from one place in time to another place in time. So a time continuum is jumping
in the
through
parallel
that.
universes.
Yeah, jumping from one universe to the other universe
to another.
through the time continuum tunnel, and within that tunnel they catch him and they put him in a prison, a very rare, unique prison that only can hold him because he's very powerful. He's as powerful as a Parabrahman, as powerful as the Trinity. So they capture him in that, and that prison is a sound barrier.
Right.
Right? So there are many other gizmos to that prison that hold it in place between the universe and the void, etc. and so forth. So there's a lot of things that I've introduced there. And within that prison is this man called Kali, until this Kalyug, where again it's his time, where he's all powerful, and everything is rotting and corrupting around you in the Kalyug, and he is going to break free into our world in this Kalyug.
Okay.
The gods are fighting between themselves because an entire set of yugas have gone. Nobody's bothered about Kali. He's gone into legend. He's gone into the mists of time. Everybody's forgotten about him. But he is breaking free and coming into this world. And there is an unlikely bunch of heroes who have to face him
Okay.
as a first line of defense to prevent him from breaking out of the prison. Because the moment he breaks out of prison, then all hell breaks loose. So that is the premise on which this book's been written. So it's what you would call as within fantasy, there are a lot of genres. So it would fall within the concept of a epic genre, epic fantasy genre. I have mixed fictional characters with mythological characters. You have Ashwathaman in this. And there's a story as to why Ashwathaman is leading this group of people. The reason for Ashwathaman, I mean, there are a number of books now being written on Ashwathaman. Some of them I find a little funny, some of them I find a little curious. But Ashwathaman as a character is a very powerful character. He's invincible. He's more powerful than Bhishma, more powerful than Drona. He's more powerful than Arjun or Karan, basically because of that gem on his forehead, and he's invincible, he's indomitable, which is why Yudhishthir lies to Drona saying Ashwatthama Hati Hatha.
Correct.
Because they can't kill him, right? And in the end, when they killed Duryodhan, what does Ashwatthama do? Single-handedly jumps into the Pandava camp in the middle of the night, kills 50,000 of their soldiers, kills Drishadyumna, who killed his father, by stamping him with his feet, because that is the only punishment awarded to a Kshatriya warrior who stabs a person in the back. And then when the Upa-Pandavas, the sons of the Pandavas, come out, thinking that they are Pandavas because they are wearing their parents' armor, thinking that they are Pandavas, he destroys them also. Finds out that he's killed children, he's racked by guilt, he's running away, the Pandavas chase him, and in his angst, he sees Krishna defending the Pandavas, and he says, how can God take sides of a side which killed their own guru using subterfuge? His mind cracks, he opens up and shoots the Brahmashira, or the Brahmastra. And Krishna safeguards and absorbs Brahmastra. Otherwise he would have attacked Uttara and Parikshit. And then curses him to a life as a vagabond. That's the word used. I think the English equivalent of the word that Krishna uses is that he'll be born as a vagabond. Or he will continue as a vagabond without remembering who he is until the end of the next Kalyug.
Fascinating.
Now, that's where my story picks up Ashwatthama and says, this is the end of the next Kalyug. And you have been, that curse is not really a curse, but a placeholder to put you here.
It was predecided. It was destined
that
for
when,
you to...
That when, if Kali breaks out of the songs of the prison,
that's what your destiny is. You have to go and
the
fight him.
all-powerful Ashwatthama, will be the only fellow who can stop him.
Interesting. There is a mantra which actually is chanted when you're tying your thread called Ashwatthama Bali Vyasa. You name all the people who have been blessed with immortality. And it's interesting to see that one of those people you've used as a character in your book to weave a story and take it forward and build an entire new universe and story around it. But that brings me to a question about your writing process, because this requires a lot of research, and while you did mention about your interest in reading mythology, a lot of mythology also arises from your reading of the epics, of the reality in the past, the itihasa. So share a bit about that aspect. How did you get interested in this area? Was it something that you started very early on in the childhood? Who pushed you into it, or was it a natural inclination? Just a little bit about that.
So two things happened, Lipika. Firstly, my grandmothers used to tell me stories. My paternal and maternal grandmother.
The nannies and dadis forever.
And my great-grandmother, my maternal great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother was alive at that time. Until I was about 8 years old, she was around. So she used to tell me stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, generally. My maternal grandmother used to talk about stories from the Upanishads, because Upanishads are nothing more than a diluted form of the Vedas.
Correct.
For people who can't really understand the Vedas. And I think a diluted form of the Upanishads is the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
So, if you look at, therefore they used to tell me stories. It could be anything. I mean, it could be the stories of how Raj Bhoj found Vikramaditya's throne.
Yeah.
Right?
The favorite story of your grandmothers, everybody's grandmothers, I think. Yeah.
And how when he sat on it, he could never be biased.
Yes.
Let me tell you that.
The
story of the ancestors of the Pandavas and the parents of King Bharat.
Okay.
So King Bharat was born out of wedlock.
Yes.
And when she went to the husband and asked him to accept her and his son, he refuses. And then finally he accepts, and Bharat is crowned king, and he becomes King Bharat, and we still have his name as the name of the country.
Country, Bharat. True.
And that's his lineage until probably till Bhishma, and then it ends there. So what happened was, then I started figuring out, hey, listen, I need to know more about this. It's so much fun. There's so much of fact here. There's so much of information here, so much of stories in it. And everything bad that ever happened in Mahabharata or anything good that happened also happened around hunting.
True. Yeah.
Okay.
That's an interesting perspective you bring into the entire.
Yes, if you see, I mean, at the end of the day, Pandu loses his ability to procreate children because of hunting.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Shantanu meets that fisherman lady during her hunt.
Yeah.
Everything is about hunting. All the good things that happen and all the bad things that happen are all happen during hunting, which means very clearly these guys are telling us, please don't kill animals.
True.
You know, I mean, that's one message that you can derive out of this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of these little things, these little sets of gems that I picked up also on the way. Ramayana, I never really liked, to be very honest.
And why? Why is that?
The reason why I did not like Ramayana is very simple here. Ramayana, at the end of the day, the bottom line, the foundationally Ramayana is a love story. Right? Ram and Sita, I think, are the most loving, doting couple that you can ever find. There cannot be another Ram, there cannot be another Sita. I mean, there cannot be, because in thought and action, they were so unified. And yet that couple could never live together.
True.
And in the end, and this is kudos to the feminine gender, so to speak, she rejects her husband.
Correct.
Because she walked with him every step of the way, she suffered for him, and he gave her up. And when he calls her back, she refuses to go. It's very haunting, it's very painful too. I love happy endings. As a child, I loved happy endings, and this was a very painful ending for me. A heartbroken man gives up his kingdom to his children and his brothers and walks away into the forest. And that's the end of him. A man who is an idol, who is an idealistic person. So therefore, that thought kept going into the process, and I started to think that I don't like Ramayana. I mean, when I was a kid, and I think that persisted.
But you draw a lot from then. That means Purans and.
I draw a lot from the Purans. I draw a lot from the Upanishads. I read a lot of that. Unfortunately, I can't read Sanskrit, and my reading of Hindi is also, I can read and write Hindi, but it's sketchy. So I rely mostly on the English versions.
And interestingly, Shatru was the first book that you came out with, and this one connects with Shatru.
Shatru is a prequel to the Song of the Trinity.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Shatru is again a fictional character that I created. Shatru is the hero of the book, Ajata Shatru, man without enemies. He finds out that the Kali is going to escape at the end of that book. I mean, just to be
so how did that book happen? How did that writing, the first time when you thought that, okay, I am reading and now I would like to explore writing, and the first point where you thought that, okay, I would like to weave stories which fit into this genre, or are in the mythological or metaverse space.
So okay, there's another interesting story there. So my first book wasn't Shatru. My first published book was Shatru.
Oh, okay.
My first book was published second, Agniputr.
Okay.
And Agniputra was a book I started writing when I was 13 years old.
Wow. I won't ask you how old are you and how long back that was, but
That was 13 years ago. 13 years old.
yeah.
So I was used to write poems at that point of time. I used to read a lot, the Enid Blytons and the Hardy Boys and everything else, along with Mahabharata and Amar Chitra Katha was a huge source of entertainment. Until one day I read a book called The Matry Circle by Robert Ludlum. And what happened when I read the book was that it ran like a movie in my head.
It does.
And from reading books, I wanted to switch over to writing books because I wanted to write like that. Like Mr. Radham was my muse, my inspiration, so to speak. And I started writing a book. And because I was so involved in fantasy and in Indian mythology, even at 13, I started writing Agniputr about a very different version of God and about a bunch of ordinary people who have to fight a superhuman phenomenon. Of course, at 13, I couldn't complete the book. After some time, I got stuck with it. I found that manuscript much later, when I was in my 30s, and I wrote that book on a long paged book. It was because when I was 13, there weren't computers.
The long registers that
That you had, no, the accounting registers I had written there.
Yeah.
I suddenly somehow I found that book and I started opened up and it flashed. Then I started rewriting that entire story and it was published by Bloomsbury,
Okay.
which is my second book, Agniputr. So that was my first thing at writing went straight away into fantasy, inspired by Indian mythology, right? When I rewrote Agniputra, I rewrote it based on an inspiration, just one sentence from the Yajurveda. Agnir ek aksarena vakum ud ajayat. Agni, with one syllable, one sound. With one syllable, O-N-E, one syllable, one sound, W-O-N, one sound. Agni with one syllable, one sound. That's the first incantation of the victory incantations in Yajurveda. And I read that and I saw the possibilities that one sentence could inspire me to write an 83,000 word book.
Wow.
That's Agniputra. And what is that one syllable? How did he ignite sound with that one syllable? That means there wasn't sound. That means he broke and brought in sound. Agni with one syllable, one sound. It's such a beautiful sentence. I mean, and it had so many possibilities to it that I wrote a book on it and called it Agniputra.
And thereafter, there were 4 books more.
So, Shatru is a prequel to the Song of the Trinity, and then there's Agniputra, and then there's a book called Fear of God. Fear of God again is not fantasy. It is based on corruption, and I think it's based on vigilantism, and of course it's a thriller. My
Yes.
books are all little, they're
They
all
have-
thrillers. So.
Yeah.
And it's a book about setting right the malaise in the system, the rot within the system, and
It is
and I think the
always
message
about the good versus the bad that
again
we were
good versus
discussing.
bad, and the message here is that listen, unless we self-regulate, there will be a very harsh form of judgment that will come upon us. Instigated by the very wrong that we are creating, because there has to be a balance between right and wrong. If wrong becomes so high that wrong itself will create the antithesis, anti-wrong, which will come in to set right the balance. So that's what vigilantism is, right? The way in which it is practiced in that book. So that's what Fear of God is. Vimana Transcripts was my 4th book. Again, one of my favorite books, where I have explored the different meanings of the word Vimana. I have done lot of research on Vimanas as they were
in the ancient times.
in the ancient times, And these Vimanas, if you there are the Rig Veda contains verses which talk about the mechanism of a Vimana, talks about what are the parts of a Vimana, what kinds of Vimanas are there, how they the Vimanas that fly, Vimanas that go on land, Vimanas that go on water and fly, go on land and fly, Vimanas the size of cities, right? There's so much of work that I had done with that, and research that I had done there, and again, it's a very pacey thriller.
And today, when people say, people practically laugh about the fact when Bharatiyas say that Bharat taught the world the most progressive sciences that now the West is trying to teach back. So our Vedas, as you can see, Vadhan talk about it, that our Vedas actually covered extensively on the aerial mode of travel long time ago.
So I believe that unless you see something, you can't build on it, right? So unless you see a Vimana flying in those times,
you couldn't have really written with that kind of precision.
Because your imagination is also, your mind works only on things that you can see.
Visual, yeah.
And what you can't see, you can't understand. For example, if you go to Maharaj Shivaji and tell him that, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a M16 rifle, assault rifle, and you show it to him, he will not have any clue what it does. He doesn't know. Warrior that he is. He knows a cannon.
True.
Maybe even in his time, and even Aurangzeb's time, you have guns which you put in the powder and then you shoot people. But he won't know an M16 assault rifle.
True.
Unless he sees one.
Correct.
Right, you show him the assault rifle, and then you come back in time, you will find pictures of the assault rifle in Shivaji's time.
So what you're inferring is that during the Vedic times there were Vimanas, or so
there
to
were
say.
Vimanas, they were flying. It was there.
So actually Ravan flew in and
The
flew
Pushpak.
out of the Pushpak.
The Pushpak.
True,
Pushpak, so Pushpak is a luxury Viman, by the way. It is described as a luxury Viman.
Acha.
So in the Song of the Trinity, you have other types of Vimans also. You have Vimans that are sleek, warplane Vimans. And I've introduced the concept there in the Song of the Trinity of Vimans having their own life. They are a form of life.
Right.
And so therefore they are neurally connected to their riders.
The one who rides it.
So there are no devices, and therefore there's a question that one of the characters asks another character when he's just getting introduced to the concept of this Viman. And he says, okay, so Vimans are actually, they are alive. So the other guy says, yeah. So he says, okay, do they have kids? So the other guy says, the other guy is actually a Deva, the Deva clan. He says, he gets flustered. I've never thought of it that way, So that's one of the funny lines in the book. But then, that is that's the concept that we were having. That's the concept that we had. There are Vimanas, and then unless you see them, you won't know them. Unless you don't, how can you describe that a Vimana can float in the water and then take off?
Correct. Yeah.
The Rig Veda describes it.
Correct.
And the entire Vimana transcripts is based on that Rig Veda, that particular stanza again. It says that it actually goes out of the water and flies into the sky to get empowered, and then it comes back to bestow its blessings upon the world. I mean, it's brilliant the way it's written.
Since and now coming back to the point where we were talking about the good versus the evil, and your interpretation or your way of telling stories on that basic crux that all stories are told around involves a lot of supernatural and the Indic subjects. My question is, let's move a little towards the supernatural part, because a lot of the times your books also talk about how if you do wrong, there are powers in the world which will make it, which will ensure that you're put in your place, and things are corrected. uh, how much of it comes from your personal belief systems and your own spiritual knowledge of both the good powers of the world and the evil, the tantric powers of the world? Because I was reading that one of your books also talks, kind of touches upon the Agniputra.
Let's understand dharma here. Remove the word fairness from dharma and introduce the word balance as dharma. Wherever or whenever there is imbalance, I will return. That is my interpretation of what the Lord says, or Lord Krishna says. So, and I believe that imbalance by itself, the way this entire universe is structured, is whenever there is imbalance, that imbalance itself triggers the aspects that bring about balance. Okay, so and that belief of mine is ingrained in all my books, whether it is a social thriller like Fear of God, or whether it is a epic fantasy like Song of the Trinity, or whether it is Vimana transcripts, or whether it is Agniputra. I believe that imbalance by itself triggers the events that bring back the balance, and that's not a pretty picture. Bringing back balance is not easy. It's not just a flick of a switch. It's a very dirty, it's a very bloody picture, so to speak.
Have you experienced any such personal anything similar to this?
Yes.
In your personal life?
Yes.
Are you spiritual?
I'm very spiritual.
And are you practicing? Do you?
I'm not religious.
Okay.
So
what is the difference?
I'll make a clear distinction.
Yeah. What is the distinction?
So, spiritualism is much more to do with your connection with God, or your connection with divinity, whatever is your interpretation. My interpretation is that it is God. Religion is the first and the foremost social order brought into this world. Right? You cannot intermix them. They're completely different things. Right? When religion was introduced to bring in a certain level of discipline in different parts of the world in different ways. Right? Some of them have transcended into becoming superstition, where people really did not understand why it is being done. Okay, so just to give you an example, when we go to a temple, we put money in the arti. When they take the arti of God and they give it to us, and then we put money in that arti thing, and then we take that thing. Why do we do that? Because our parents did it, because our grandparents did it, and their parents did it. Do we know why we do that? Okay, so we do that because what is the lesson being taught there is, listen, true knowledge is like fire. It burns everything and retains only what is the purest form, which is fire itself. You are showing that fire to God, saying that you are like fire, you are the truest wisdom, the truest knowledge. And when that arti is shown to you, what are you saying? You're saying, here I am donating my materialistic money or belongings, which neither did I bring here, nor will I take with me when I die. I am relinquishing it here. And in its place, I am taking true knowledge. That's Arti. It's a very clear spiritual definition to it.
I'm so glad that you stated this, because a lot of people indeed don't know a lot of practices that we follow, especially when it comes to a lot of people feel that, and now I come back to the point where you talk about being religious is different from being spiritual. A lot of people give a counter argument to the fact when we ask them to go and visit a nearby temple, saying that we have mandirs in our homes. Why do we need to go to the temple? Similarly, the thing that you the thing that you explained about, why we make that offering. Factually speaking, as you mentioned earlier, in the earlier times, whatever you used to wear, and that is the reason why, when you go to Tirupati, a lot of people, apne daan mein they give away their jewelry, whatever they are wearing, including their hair. I mean, which is the most precious considered
for a lady,
for a
yes.
lady especially. So I'm so glad that you brought this up. But then again, it doesn't answer the fact that how is spirituality different from religious?
Like I said, religion is a
religious?
social order, and it should not be mistaken with your connection to God. Spirituality is your
So what you're saying is you don't need to be in that social order to be spiritual?
No.
Or
you don't have to be in that social order to be spiritual at all. You can be spiritual without being religious. You can be spiritual. Spiritualism is when you perceive God wherever you are, where you are able to feel the presence of God. Some people feel the presence of God in a temple. Some people feel the presence of God in specific temples. Some people feel the presence of God when they look at nature. Right? Some people feel the presence of God when they look at, for example, their parents or children. Right? All of these are symbols. And what is important is the trigger that makes you feel the presence of God. When you say presence of God, the question is, are you talking about the man in the sky who is always looking down on you? In certain faiths,
it's believed that
they're always looking down upon you, who loves you dearly. But if you even commit the smallest mistake, he will punish you like nobody's business and throw you into a hell. But he still loves you. See, all of this becomes a little incredulous. It becomes a little difficult to believe for people once they've attained a certain level of maturity.
and that is why I feel
It's not God's business to look at what you're doing.
And that is why I feel that somewhere Sanatan has always been very. If you look at it, it's naturally secular. It's naturally, it does not really bind you in different forms. You can always pray to the Nirakar. You can also pray to the Akar. You can pray to the nature. So coming to that fact, and since a lot of your writing is influenced from the Sanatan aspect of this thing, my last question to you in terms of your own writing is, how much of your personal background influences your belief systems or your understanding of Sanatana? Are you connected to your village or the roots that you come from?
I am very connected to the roots that I come from.
Where do you come from? First, let's start with that.
So we are basically from the West Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh.
Okay.
There's a village called Pangidi-Gudem, and a district headquarters called Eluru, which is the district headquarters of West Godavari district. They are my hometowns. They are about 30-40 kilometers from each other. That's where I come from. My family has got a certain history of its own. From my grandfather's side, or my paternal grandfather's side, there's a guy called, Douglas Kirkpatrick, if I remember the name right, who's written a book called The History of the Krishna District, or Kistna District as it was known in that time. A brief history or something like that is written out of. He's a 19th century or 20th century historian, British historian, who has written about my family. He's dedicated a couple of pages to my family in that very large book, where he's dedicated a lot of. He's traced a lot of families from that part of royal families from that part of the world, and for me to read about my family, I had ready-made history from the 19th, 20th century, where we were originally farmers, and we joined in the fight against Tipu Sultan.
Wow. So that's where the connect is, and we are coming to the most interesting part of this discussion.
Fight against Tipu Sultan, because Tipu Sultan is, in some circles today, even now, he's considered to be a freedom fighter. There are movies.
Oh, he continues to be a controversial figure. I think it's become more of a national subject now than remaining within the realms of Karnataka.
So see, basically, the Maharaja of Mysore was only a Katputli. He was merely a puppet in Tipu Sultan's time. He was a marauder. He used to, other than the forced conversions and the tyranny and the killings, he also used to attack and rob the neighboring kingdoms, which were in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, other parts of Karnataka, Kerala, and they were all really, peeved about him. And so when the British went against Tipu Sultan, they rallied against him to bring down his tyranny or tyranny. And we used to run guns and food for the British.
Primarily, the general idea given through the various serials or the movies that are made on Tipu initially or earlier were more about the fact that he fought the British to protect the culture and the to protect not only his own region but Bharat, so to say, which is not what you're really sharing here, So the British fought him primarily.
There are records otherwise also. It's not as if I'm quoting controversy here. There are records to prove the forced conversions.
Yes.
There are records to prove that what kind of a marauder he was.
Right.
So there is a level of glorification which has happened of Tipu Sultan. I think post 1947, like glorification, and from the point of view of passiveness, from the point of view of looking at pacifying a certain community or a certain bunch of people, so that no action is taken. Maybe it was required at that time. It's very good to have hindsight and to
criticize,
but you never know how the situation was at that time and what actions were taken at that time. So we can't really judge that. But fact of the matter remains that history is something else, right? So therefore,
and the Bommadevaras actually fought Tipu with the British. So tell us a little bit more about it, as to how did you go, other than after reading that
book? Wasn't personally present there, but yes.
But after reading that book, which connected you to your history of Bommadevaras and what role they played, what was the next set of steps you took? Why I'm asking this is because, in 2013 when I lost my father, for the longest time I had given up all my belief systems and faiths, and I was like in a constant battle with Ishwar as to,
why?
Of course. Why? For like any daughter, I think, or any child losing a parent, it was difficult for us. But but what happened was as soon as the COVID started, and in between the first
Wave.
After the first wave, when the government actually gave us the first break from staying. No, I mean, when they opened up.
Lockdown, after the lockdown opened
After
up.
the lockdown opened up, I went back to my village, and that's where my story of connecting with my roots started. And since then, I have not only gone back to Uttarakhand, where the village is, several times, but also rebuilt my ancestral home there. So, what was your first reaction after reading the book, and did you trace back your history in any physical way other than the bit of about reading? Are you? That's where that question came from. Are you
So-
connected with your village?
I am connected to my village, and so there is no dearth of people who will tell me about my people, my family,
Of course.
my village. If I go there, when I go there, my cousins are there, and we have. So we had some lands. We do still have them. Some paddy fields. And delta lands, which is in the Krishna district, which is after Vijayawada.
Right.
And so there was this farmer who wanted to meet with me, and I said, okay, sure. Old man, very old man at that time. I mean, I'm talking sometime around 10, 15 years ago, more than that. Very old man. He must have been in his late 80s or maybe even the 90s. Weather-beaten face, you know how it is with farmers, creased, and in that part of Andhra Pradesh, we are all very big made, like Haryanvis. You know, almost all of this is about 5'11" to 6'2", 6'3", and broad shoulders and very
Yeah.
big, tough guys. So I went to his house. I went to the village, and in the village center, I was there, and then he came from the thing because Raja Garu had come in, which is me. I had come in. I'm the firstborn of the firstborn there also.
Ah, okay.
So he came and he sat down with me, and I am far removed from the glories of a fiefdom, so to speak. I work in PwC. I'm an executive director. I run compliances, regulatory compliances across 65 countries, and so there are two worlds that I manage. The world which recognizes
pure
me as, and there's another world.
Yeah.
So I went there, and he came in and he said, Raja Garu, and I sat down with him, and I was so amazed. He spoke perfect English.
Oh, wow.
87, 88, 90-year-old man. Perfect English. I mean, diction was so good. The pronunciation was so good. The words he used were so good. And he said 10th BA back in the 1940s or something.
Wow. Which used to be a big achievement.
My mouth
Yeah.
dropped open. What? And this guy is talking world affairs. He's talking, farm issues. He's talking agriculture issues. He's talking automobiles. He's talking cricket. And the reason he wanted to meet me was because he was a big fan of my father's. My father has another story to it, which is that he has or had a condition called muscular dystrophy,
Okay.
which is a hereditary condition. So at the age of 11, he lost his feet.
Oh.
Muscular dystrophy is where all your muscles fail. So he lost his feet when he was 11. He lost his arms after that. But he's a great fan of cricket. Now, from my paternal grandmother's side, there's a trophy being played in the name of my great-great-grandfather in Chennai.
Okay.
And there are 4 streets named after my ancestors in Chennai. They are a cricketing family.
Wow. What is the
Buchibabu
trophy called?
Naidu Trophy. Buchibabu
Okay.
Trophy.
Wow.
So my father inherited that cricketing spirit from that part of the family, but he couldn't play. So he set up his own club at the age of 14. called the Sri Rama Cricket Club, named after his father.
Mm.
And this cricket club today is Andhra Pradesh's oldest member in the Andhra Cricket Association. It's brought out many test players, state players, Ranji Trophy players. It's brought out all of these guys. It has introduced them into the world during my father's time. And so he died. My father died when he was 28 years old, and I was 3 months old. So I actually have no memory of my father. But his memory has been kept alive. The people whom he took care of, whose families he took care of because of cricket, because of his club.
Believe you me, I mean, this is so similar to my experience, because I feel for all of us the lives have moved on, but in the village the time stays still.
Time runs slowly there.
Yeah, and they absolutely, and with absolute crystal clear memory they have of my father, his brothers, what they did, how they played, my grandfather. And I can completely relate to what you're sharing here, I mean, and it gives me goosebumps at times, and it's so fascinating to go back and sit with them and keep listening to
Keep showing about it,
many times, it's the same stories they repeat, but I'm sure, they are as enjoyable, and every time they are more enjoyable when you listen to them.
So therefore, this farmer was a big fan of my father's, and apparently he's played in his team as well when back in the day. So he was recounting stories to me about my father, about his love for the game, and how without the use of his legs he used to sit in his Dodge car in the field and watch these guys play their matches, and God forbid they lose a match, he used to give them living hell. And if they won a match, then it was a complete celebration for 2-3 days.
Wow.
So there's so many things about my dad that I learned, because otherwise I couldn't have. And this old farmer with his impeccable English spoke to me and talked to me, and I was flabbergasted. I mean, I was in a different era from the time he talked about, and then finally he said, "Babu Garu, I have to go now," in Telugu, of course. I'm tired. It was very nice meeting you, and you do look like your father, except he had hair. And he was much fairer and better looking than you. I said, "Thank you very much." Thank you very much for meeting me. And so the title remains, Raja Garu, the title remains. Nothing else remains because it's all abolished.
And
that memory remains.
And that connect back with the village has kind of made you, do you think that it has made you more spiritual, or have you looked at it from that perspective?
I was spiritual. I would like to think of myself as being spiritual from when I was a kid. I mean, I started writing poems about Lord Krishna when I was 11 years old.
Oh, interesting.
I could picturize him sitting on the low-lying branch of a tree in his Vrindavan, and with his cows around him and his gopikas around him, playing a flute, and I actually wrote a poem about that. I think it was greatly influenced by my guru. My family follows Sai Baba.
Okay.
Both Shirdi Sai Baba and Satya Sai Baba. In fact, I was named by Satya Sai Baba. The name was given by Satya Sai Baba. I was given Akshabhyasam, Annaprasnam, everything. All when you write your first word, when you eat your first meal, all of that was done by Baba for me in Puttaparthi, in close to Bangalore. He used to come to our house, and I used to listen to a lot of his discourses every summer, whether I liked it or not. My grandmother used to take me to Bangalore and used to take me to Whitefield, where Sai Baba's ashram was, and made me listen to his discourses.
And that's where your Sai, the name also comes in.
So he named me Chandravadhan. But my grandmother included the name Sai in it.
Oh, how lovely. Okay.
So it became Sai Chandravadhan, and I write under the name of Vadhan, basically because Vadhan is what they call me at home.
And it also fits in easily into the book.
Into the book, no? Sai Chandravadhan Bommadevara. Imagine, the title will be something small on top. So,
But you could also use Rajagaru.
why not? I'll have the income tax come up to me and say, where's what Rajagaru?
Which Raja are you? No, but it's thank you so much, Vadhan. It's been an absolute pleasure having this chat with you. I think with writers we usually have a very different and restricted conversation to their writing and their books, but knowing them beyond their writing is something which I think also interests everybody, because there is a lot you draw from life, there is a lot you draw from your experiences.
Absolutely.
Apart from your research and reading, and that adds to the how you portray your characters, that adds to your stories, that adds to your the entire supernatural cult-like characters that you're able to create. And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
For your next project and your next book, and we will meet again for that.
Absolutely.
Of course, I'll be more polished and professional by then in my podcasts.
I think you're perfectly. See, I don't want. See, the whole point is if you lose the rawness, if you lose that, then it becomes a little bit too polished and corporate. Yeah, which I don't think we should have, especially when you're discussing art and writing and stuff like that. I think it's picture perfect what you've done. I mean, I don't think you need to tinker with it a lot.
Okay.
At all. I mean, I loved the conversation. It was wonderful. It was natural. It was very easy for me. There were I think it flowed very well, and I think it's all kudos to you and the way in which you drove the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that positive feedback, and thank you once again for making time for this.
Most welcome. My pleasure.